All right, so you want to learn how to navigate by the stars, huh? Sounds pretty cool. And you've given us a ton of stuff to dig into for this deep dive.
Yeah, it looks like a lot.
We've got articles for hikers and even, get this, some pilots talking about what happens if their equipment fails at night.
Oh, wow.
And no joke, we even found this company in Barcelona that's doing moon phase personality readings on a boat.
Seriously?
Yeah, but we'll get to that later. First, imagine this. You're out in the middle of nowhere, it's pitch black, and your GPS is dead.
Oh.
What do you do? Well, tonight, we're going to learn how to navigate by the stars, just like people did for, like, centuries.
That's amazing, isn't it? I mean, people use the stars to explore, to trade, even to understand where we fit in the universe.
I know, right? It's kind of magical. But it's not magic, it's science. So, first things first, how do you find north if you're lost?
Well, if you're in the northern hemisphere, you start with Polaris, the North Star.
Okay, so Polaris.
Yeah.
Why is it so special?
It's basically lined up perfectly with the Earth's axis. Think of it like the top of a spinning top. Everything else is moving, but that top point stays still. That's Polaris. So it always points true north.
Oh, I see. Like a compass built into the sky? That's so cool. So how do we find it? There are a lot of stars up there.
Right. Well, one of your articles talks about using these two constellations, Ursa Major, also called the Big Dipper, and Cassiopeia.
The Big Dipper, I know that one. It looks like a Big Dipper. Right?
Exactly. It's probably the easiest one to spot. Now, see the two stars that make the outer edge of the Dipper's bowl?
Yeah, I see them.
Imagine a line going straight out from those stars, about 5 times the distance between them, and bam, you hit Polaris.
Okay, I could totally do that. But what if I can't see the Big Dipper? Like, what if it's cloudy or something?
Then we can use Cassiopeia. It kind of looks like a W or an M, depending on how it's tilted in the sky. Find the middle point of that central V shape and draw a line straight out. That'll point you towards Polaris, too.
2 ways to find the same star. So once you've got Polaris, you know which way is north. But this is what blew my mind. Polaris's height in the sky tells you your latitude.
It's true. Imagine you're standing at the North Pole. Polaris will be right overhead. As you move south, it looks lower and lower. By measuring its angle, you can figure out how far north or south you are.
No way.
Yeah.
So early explorers, they actually used this to make maps and stuff.
They did.
That's crazy. So Polaris not only tells you north, but it kind of tells you where you are on the planet, too. That's amazing. Okay, what about finding south? The articles had a few different ideas about that, and some of them seemed a bit, well...
Yeah, finding south in the northern hemisphere isn't as precise as using Polaris. One way is to look at the crescent moon. If it's high in the sky, imagine a line connecting the tips of the crescent and going down to the horizon. That point is roughly south.
Okay, roughly being the key word there. There was also something about Orion's belt. How does that one work?
So when Orion is up high, it's soared. Those fainter stars hanging below the belt, they point almost straight down. Where that sword hits the horizon, that's about where south is.
So these are more like backup options if Polaris isn't around.
Right.
Got it. Okay, so that's the northern hemisphere. But what about down south? I mean, they don't have Polaris down there, right?
Nope, but they've got the Southern Cross. It's their key to finding south. Now, it doesn't work quite like Polaris. The Southern Cross is 4 bright stars in, well, a cross shape.
Okay, I think I've seen pictures of that one.
You probably have. So imagine a line going through the long part of the cross and extending out about 4.5 times the length of the cross. Where that line meets the horizon, that's south.
A little more complicated than Polaris, but still pretty clever. It's crazy to think about those early explorers sailing across huge oceans using just these stars.
I know, right?
Yeah.
They were so skilled.
It makes you really appreciate what they did.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so we've got Polaris up north, the Southern Cross down south. But are there any tricks that work no matter where you are on Earth?
Actually, yeah. Your sources mentioned using some stars that everyone can see, like Sirius and Orion's belt, to get a basic sense of direction.
Ah, Sirius. That's the brightest star in the sky, right?
You got it. Now, it doesn't point to a specific direction like Polaris, but knowing where Sirius is can help you figure out where other stars are.
Like a landmark in the sky.
Exactly. And Orion's belt, remember that one? 3 stars in a line?
Yeah, that one's pretty easy to spot.
Right. Well, Orion rises in the east and sets in the west, so that can give you a general idea of those directions.
So we've got our north-south stars, and then these universal ones for basic directions. Speaking of universal, one of your articles mentioned the Lunar method. It sounded so simple I thought it was a joke.
Oh, yeah, the lower D method. That came from the pilot forum you gave us.
Yeah, the pilots.
It's actually a pretty clever way to figure out direction using any star and 2 sticks.
2 sticks. Okay, I'm listening.
So you stick the sticks in the ground, one taller than the other, about a meter apart. Then you kneel behind the shorter stick and line it up with the taller one so they're like sights on a gun. Pick any star, doesn't matter which one, and watch it for like 15, 20 minutes.
Okay.
The direction the star seems to move tells you which way you're facing.
Wait, so I'm using the sticks to track where the star goes, but how do I know which direction is which?
That's where LED comes in. If the star moves left, you're facing north. Up means east, right is south, and down means west.
L or D, north, east, south, west. Got it, so I can find my way using any star.
Exactly.
Wow, but doesn't the pilot say this method isn't perfect?
He did. It's less accurate near the poles, especially up north, because everything seems to circle Polaris. So it's always best to double check using other methods if you can.
Good point. Never rely on just one thing when you're navigating. Okay, so we've got the stars. But what about during the day? I mean, we've got the sun.
You're right. That's the most obvious one. But even without any fancy tools, the sun can tell you a lot.
Well, yeah, obviously it rises in the east and sets in the west.
Right. And then there's that trick with a wrist watch to find south.
Oh, yeah. It's like something out of a spy movie.
Right. If you hold your watch flat and point the hour hand at the sun, then cut the angle between the hour hand and 12 o'clock in half, that line points roughly south.
It's like a little sundial on your wrist.
Pretty much. And if you don't have a watch, you can make a basic sun compass using a stick and its shadow. You mark where the tip of the shadow is at different times, connect the dots, and you get a line that runs roughly east-west.
So many ways to find your way. I'm starting to think I could ditch the GPS.
That's the idea.
But you know, we've been so focused on finding direction, I almost forgot about something else we can do with the stars.
What's that?
Tell time. It's like some ancient secret knowledge.
It is pretty amazing. And it all comes back to the Big Dipper. Remember how it goes around Polaris? Well, it does that in a very predictable way, making it a giant clock in the sky.
So the Big Dipper is like a giant hour hand. I love that. How do you actually use this star clock?
So remember the date, March 6th. On that day, the Big Dipper's position actually matches the real time. So if the Dipper is pointing straight up at midnight on March 6th, it's actually midnight.
No way. But what about any other time of the year?
Easy. For every month after March, you subtract 2 hours from what the Big Dipper is showing you. So in April, you take away 2 hours. In May, you take away 4, and so on.
So even without a watch, I can kind of tell what time it is just by looking at the stars.
Pretty cool, huh?
It's incredible. You know, our ancestors were so in tune with all this stuff. It makes you think about how much we've lost touch with the natural world.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, this is all super fascinating, but let's be real for a second. Are you saying we should ditch our GPS and just use the stars?
Not necessarily. Technology is great, but it's all about having a backup plan. What if your phone dies? What if your GPS goes haywire?
True. Knowing how to use the stars could be a lifesaver.
Exactly. That's what one of the articles was really emphasizing. You never know what might happen, so it's always good to have multiple ways to find your way.
I feel more confident already knowing I can at least try to use the stars if I need to.
That's the spirit. And, you know, there's more to this than just being practical. The article talked about how this is about more than just getting from point A to point B.
Really?
Yeah. It's about feeling self-reliant, like you can handle things even if technology fails. It's about building confidence and resilience.
I like that. It's about taking back some of that control and realizing we're more capable than we think.
Exactly. We're going to talk more about that after the break. We'll get into how to prepare, what to do if you actually get lost, and we'll even dive into those pilot forum discussions about surviving equipment failures at night. That stuff was intense.
And we can't forget about that moon phase personality reading on a boat. I'm still not sure what to make of that one,
Yeah.
but I'm definitely curious.
Stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back with more from the world of celestial navigation. And we're back talking all about navigating by the stars. Before the break, we were learning about how to find north, south, and even how to tell time just by looking up at the night sky. It's pretty amazing what you can figure out without any gadgets, huh?
Totally. But I'm really curious about those pilots you mentioned, the ones from that forum talking about what happens when their equipment fails at night.
Oh, yeah. That was a really interesting read. They had some pretty intense stories.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're flying planes. I bet things can get hairy up there pretty quickly. What kind of stuff were they talking about?
Well, one pilot said that staying proficient is key, especially for night flying. He said you have to practice regularly so you don't lose those skills and you're ready for anything, even when you can barely see.
That makes sense. Like anything else, the more you do it, the more confident you are.
Exactly. And he also said that knowing the terrain and the weather is crucial. Like on a really dark night, he said you could fly straight into a cloud without even seeing it coming.
Whoa, that's scary. It makes you realize how important it is to pay attention, even if you think you know an area really well.
Yeah, for sure. Another pilot had this tip about flashlights. Yeah. He said he always carries 3 of them, and he keeps them in different spots in the cockpit so he can always reach at least one, even in an emergency.
Oh, I see.
And get this, he makes sure at least one of them is strapped down so it doesn't fly around if there's turbulence.
Wow, that's thinking ahead. I would never have thought of that.
Right. They really have to think of everything.
So did they talk about what to do if, like, everything goes wrong? Like, what if you lose all power or something?
Yeah, they did. They said fuel management is critical. One pilot said he had to land on this tiny unlit airstrip once because his electrical system went out.
Yikes.
Yeah. And he said the biggest thing he learned was to always have enough fuel to get you not just to any airport, but to one that's well lit, especially on a dark night.
That's a good point, even if you're not flying. Always have a backup plan. You know, it's funny, we've been talking about all this serious survival stuff, and then we have that company in Barcelona offering moon phase personality readings on a boat.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of a wild card. Did you actually look into that one?
I did. Apparently, they have an astrologer on board who looks at where the moon was when each person was born.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah.
And what's that supposed to tell you?
They say it reveals your personality traits, and they even do, like, compatibility readings for the whole group.
So it's like astrological matchmaking on a boat.
Pretty much. I can't believe that's a real thing. I mean, I'm all for a little fun, but is there any actual science behind that?
Well, that's the thing. I'm not so sure about the science, but it's interesting that they're connecting astrology to the moon and the ocean and our emotions. It kind of makes you think about how people have always looked for meaning in the stars.
Yeah, there's definitely something romantic about it. The moon controlling our personalities and stuff. It's a cool idea, even if it's not, scientifically proven.
Exactly. But speaking of science, one of the articles had this really good point about using celestial navigation as a backup skill for survival.
Oh, yeah, like if your GPS dies or something.
Exactly. It said even if you normally use technology, knowing how to navigate by the stars could save your life if your gadgets fail.
That's true. Imagine being lost in the woods with a dead phone.
Yeah. Knowing how to find your way using the stars could make all the difference.
That's a scary thought, but a good reminder to have those skills. It's like an insurance policy. But the article also said something else that I really liked.
What was that?
It said that learning these skills isn't just about knowing how to get around. It's about feeling more self-reliant, more confident, more resilient.
I agree. It's about knowing you can handle things on your own, even without technology.
Yeah. And that makes me feel more connected to the natural world, too, like I'm part of something bigger.
Me too.
Huh.
This whole deep dive has been so cool. It's amazing how much there is to learn.
I know. And it makes you wonder what else we've forgotten, What other amazing things are out there just waiting for us to rediscover them?
Right. There's so much to explore.
Okay, well, before we get too philosophical here, I think it's time to bring in our special guest. We've talked a lot about celestial navigation in theory, but now we have someone who's actually lived and breathed these skills. Joining us tonight is Tristan Gooley, author and expert in natural navigation. Welcome to the Deep Dive, Tristan.
It's great to have you here.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into navigating by the stars. We've covered so much ground tonight, from using Polaris to find north to why having backup navigation skills is so important these days. And now we have a real expert joining us. Tristan Gooley, author and all-around natural navigation guru. Welcome to the deep dive.
So glad to have you here, Tristan.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Tristan, you're all about connecting with the natural world and rediscovering those ancient skills that have guided people for centuries. What got you into natural navigation in the first place?
Well, I've always been drawn to nature. Even as a kid, I loved exploring the woods near my house, noticing things like the way the sun and stars moved, how the animals behaved. It got me thinking, could nature be our guide, like a living map and compass?
That's amazing. You've always had that navigator's instinct. And you've taken that instinct to some pretty incredible places. Deserts, the Arctic. You've navigated some of the toughest environments out there. So what's the biggest misconception people have about navigating by the stars?
I think a lot of people think it's super complicated, like you need special training or expensive equipment, but honestly, anyone can learn the basics. It's not about memorizing a bunch of star charts or doing crazy math. It's about observing, seeing patterns, and learning to trust your senses. It's about rediscovering those skills we all have inside us.
It's like that idea we were talking about earlier, terrain association, using the landscape itself to help you navigate.
Exactly. It's not just the stars, it's everything. The shape of the land, the wind, how water flows, even how plants and animals act, they can all give you clues.
So it's like being a detective of nature. You're always looking for clues to help you figure out where you are.
I like that. And the more you practice, the better you get at picking up on those little hints.
You mentioned trusting your senses, and in one of your books you talk about having a natural navigator's mindset. What does that mean?
It's about changing how we see things. We're so used to GPS and screens that we forget to trust our own instincts. The natural navigator's mindset is about slowing down, paying attention, asking questions. It's about being okay with not always knowing exactly where you are or where you're going.
It's like letting go of that need to be in control all the time and learning to trust your own abilities.
Yeah, exactly. And when you do that, you feel a sense of freedom and independence you don't get from just relying on technology.
I love that. It's about adventure and trusting yourself, but things don't always go perfectly right. What would you say to someone who's lost and freaking out in the wilderness?
First thing, stop. Take a breath. Don't panic. Panicking just makes it harder to think straight. Remind yourself that you have the skills to figure this out. You can do this.
It's about that inner strength, staying calm in a tough situation.
Exactly. And then, go back to basics. Can you find Polaris? Can you use the sun to figure out east and west? Are there any landmarks you recognize that can help you get your bearings? Remember all those techniques we talked about? Those are your tools.
Putting those skills to the test when it really counts.
Right. And if you've tried everything and you're still lost, remember the most important rule. Stay put. Make yourself visible, signal for help, and don't waste energy. Someone will find you.
That's such good advice. Sometimes the best thing to do is just stay calm and wait. Tristan, as we wrap up our deep dive into natural navigation, what's one last piece of wisdom you want to leave our listeners with?
Just this. Go outside. Leave your phone behind. And just observe. Notice the sun, the stars, the land around you. The more you pay attention, the more you'll realize how much nature is trying to tell us. You might surprise yourself with what you learn about the world and about yourself.
That's beautiful. Tristan Gooley, thank you so much for being with us tonight. It's been an honor.
It was such a pleasure having you on the deep dive.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into navigating by the stars. We hope you've discovered a new appreciation for the power of nature and the knowledge that's all around us, just waiting to be unlocked.
The night sky is more than just a pretty sight. It's a map, a compass, a guide that's been around for as long as humans have walked the earth. So get out there, explore, and let the stars lead the way.
And who knows, maybe you'll find something amazing along the way. Thanks for listening.